Hey friends, and welcome to another Majora's Mask making video. Majora's Mask project making video. Is that even what I say? I can't remember. Anyway, today we are up to the 13th mask, unlucky 13. However, I actually think 13 is a rather lucky number. As always, I just want to say a huge thank you for anyone who is following along with the project. I have been really enjoying it, and once again, I am still surprised that I keep continuing with it, and I'm up to the 13th mask. Quite a lot of you have commented about which mask you would like to see next, and luckily a few of you have commented about doing this one. So I would like to announce that the 13th mask will be the Zora's Mask. It is the, I was gonna say third and final transformation one, but technically it's not, but it is the third transformation one. We also kind of include the Fierce Deity amongst the transformation one, but that's not for ages. We will be working on the Zora one, and it's probably one of my favorite areas of Majora's Mask. I really enjoyed playing as Mikau, or the Spirit of Mikau, in the Zora Hall and Gerudo Fortress area. I think it was probably one of the most difficult boss fights of the entire game, but I really did like that area, so I am keen to be doing the mask. I've put this one off for a little bit. I don't know whether it will be easy in my mind. I keep thinking that making this Zora mask will be a lot easier than a few of the other ones that I've done, which is why I put it off for this Christmas period, because we will be away. I'm also sensing that it might be more difficult than I think, so I guess only time will tell. I don't want to yap too much at the beginning of this video because I do want to get straight into the mask making. So without further ado, I'll let you guys get to it.
Like every other mask from the project, I grabbed the Amazon cardboard mask base and started to try and figure out how exactly I wanted to shape the features of the Zora. The most obvious feature, of course, is the nose, so I got out some foil and started to try and shape to the size of the nose that I actually wanted. I was also tossing up between whether I wanted to make this mask see-through or not, and then decided against it, so I grabbed some masking tape and covered up the eyes. Another thing that I noticed was that the chin of the mask base was too round and the Zora's chin is quite pointed. So I cut that off and then covered that with masking tape as well. This was all to just try and get the shape of the chin as close to a Zora as possible. I already knew the head itself was too wide, but I didn't want to trim it down too much. The next features that I wanted to mold were the fins, so I started to grab some more foil and shape those to the best of my ability. There were 4 pieces in total, basically making long triangles, and then trying to figure out how to attach it to the mask. They are also pointed in different directions, some are more angled than others, so I had to make some of the triangles flat on the side and then some of them flat on the bottom. Once I was happy with the shapes, it was time to attach them to the mask. So of course I just got my hot glue gun. However, I have had difficulty with the hot glue and foil before, so I had my masking tape on standby. I used the hot glue to try and place them as best as I could, though for the first fins I did realize I had to move them a little bit further back from the eyes than I wanted to, and also tried my best to get the angles correct. The next difficult part was to make it even on the other side. I do want to note that the Zora mask is in no way symmetrical. I tried my best to get it as close as possible, but noticed as I continued details that it wasn't really great. Once the foil was hot glued on, I grabbed the masking tape and I started to basically wrap all the features in masking tape. This was to hold them down, but also allow the foam clay to stick to the mask a lot more, because I noticed with the Mask of Sense when I made that, it was easier to attach the foam clay to the masking tape rather than just the foil. It also made the foil fins just that little bit thicker so it could take the weight of the foam clay as it dried. And of course, the next thing that I needed to do was cover everything in foam clay. I initially started only covering the fins in foam clay because I wanted to get them dry first and then go over the actual head with foam clay afterwards, so it could hold the fins in place at the bottom of them and also give me more places to hold as I added the foam clay. There's nothing worse than adding the foam clay to a whole mask and not having anywhere to put my hands. I did leave them outside in the sun to dry, and thankfully we are getting over 40 degrees Celsius days here, so it dried really quickly. I say that as thankfully for the masks, not for me. It was now time to cover the rest of the mask in foam clay. I'm actually running out of foam clay at this point, so I was quite worried that I wasn't going to have enough. I basically rolled out little balls and then smoothed it over the mask completely, and then realized that I actually used too much on the mask base, so I just kind of pushed it towards the edge and then cut off what I didn't need. I also wanted to make sure the areas around the fins were as smooth and cohesive as possible, just because I didn't want it to look like they were just randomly attached fins, and I feel like I got pretty close. Once the foam clay was completely all over the masks, I wanted to wet it. I haven't showed this in any other mask process video, but basically what I do is I grab the mask and go run it under the tap. I make sure basically all the features are drenched, and even use my hands to just kind of smooth down certain areas where there might be bubbles in the foam clay or random bumps that I missed. The next day, the foam clay was all dry. I did also add some little eyebrows, but I forgot to film that because my phone died. And when all the foam clay is dry, it means it's time to paint. I mixed up a light blue color. It was basically a whole lot of white and a few drops of like a teal color. And then I completely coated the whole thing. This was also a little difficult because I wanted to make sure I had somewhere to hold, but I mostly just kept my hand on the inside of the mask so I could just rotate it and paint everything. I left it for a little bit and the paint dried rather quickly, so it was time to put on a second coat of paint. And although I was running low, I just kind of mixed up the same shade, making it as close to the paint that was already on the palette and covering the whole thing once again. Once that was completely painted and completely covered, I left it over by the aircon to make sure that it was completely dry before I grabbed my markers to try and start drawing on the details, such as the eyes and the markings and the mouth. Now my markers are old, so a lot of the time I did have to kind of press them down onto my cutting board to try and get some color out, and then I just used a paintbrush if the tip of the marker was too dry. I also asked Alk for help a few times just to see if it was kind of symmetrical or as close to it as possible. And I basically spent the rest of the night adding these drawings on. I brought up the design on Models Resource like I have with the last few masks, just as a guide of what the Zora Mask looks like. I was basically eyeballing it, and it was also like midnight, so I was trying my best to make it as good as possible. I was also kind of worried at this point because I was running out of time. We were on a bit of a time crunch because we're going away for the holidays and I wanted to get the mask done. And I was a bit indecisive on how I wanted to make the markings look. I decided just to continue using the markers because it was probably the quickest way to do it, and hopefully when all that was dry, I could add a little bit more detail using some makeup. Using an old eyeshadow palette for the details in these masks has helped enormously. I don't usually paint, it's not my medium. I prefer to draw, so I am used to using pencils and other things like that for shading, and I can never get it right with paint. And these markers are quite similar. I basically just continue to cover the fins in the details, in the markings, and try to make them as symmetrical as possible. And I would like to say that I was pretty happy with the result. Also, the more I worked on the mask, the more I realized the shape of the head is not too close to the Zora one in game. So I was really relying on the makeup to help with the shading. At this point as well, I also realized the fins kind of covered the default holes where the masks usually have the elastic threaded through. So I had to get a pencil and puncture just a little bit lower to make my own holes to thread the elastic through. The next day, all the marker details were dry, and I really wanted to get this done. Grabbed my makeup palette and a brush, and I basically just started using different shades of blue around the markings on the fins to smudge them out a little bit, add a little bit more detail, and I also added some shading around the eyes, nose, mouth, and chin. And this is me basically declaring the Zora Mask done, because I ran out of time. I personally don't think it looks too bad, but please let me know if you like how it turned out. Feel free to subscribe if you want to follow along with the project, and let me know in the comments which mask you'd want to see next. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Bye bye!